They buried it for nearly a century. Not because it broke the laws of physics, but because it shattered the illusion of certainty. In a candlelit room in 1926, Albert Einstein claimed he made contact with the dead. And what happened next was so unsettling, so paradigm-shifting, that those closest to him demanded silence. But now, after 99 years, that silence is cracking. You know Einstein as the man who split space from time, the genius who defied gravity with a chalkboard and a stare. But what most people don't realize is that the same man who redefined physics once sat in a candlelit room, closed his eyes and claimed to hear the voices of the dead. The year was 1926. The location? A remote estate outside Zurich. The guests? Few. Trusted. All sworn to secrecy. For decades, this moment was erased from every official biography. But then a letter surfaced, yellowed, sealed, and marked in Einstein's own hand. Do not publish. Not yet. Inside it, a line that scholars dismissed as metaphor. Their voices came not from the air, but from the fabric itself. Fabric. As in space-time? Or something else? You've never read this in a textbook. You were never meant to. Because if Einstein, poster child of rational science, truly believed he made contact with something beyond life, then everything changes. About him. About us. They tried to bury it. The letter was intercepted after his death, placed in a private university archive under restricted access. For 99 years it sat undisturbed, catalogued under philosophical fragments. Not science, not physics, not to be seen. Until a researcher looking for early quantum notes opened the wrong box and found a confession. Einstein described a resonance outside time. He said it echoed with the logic of mathematics, but the feeling of memory. He asked whether consciousness might leave traces like ripples that do not fade. And he ended the letter with a warning. Some truths are not for public minds. Not yet. You might ask yourself, why would this man, the scientist of all scientists, explore a seance? Because what he witnessed during that private gathering wasn't parlor tricks. It was impossible. He recorded a voice calling his name in a frequency range no instrument in the room could measure. The temperature dropped precisely 5.4 degrees in under 2 seconds, something he annotated, not with fear, but with awe. He didn't call it proof. He called it a door cracked open. Ask yourself, why was this story never published? Why did the university hide the letter? And why, when a student once referenced it in a 1971 lecture, was the recording of that lecture pulled from circulation the next day? This isn't a conspiracy. It's a pattern. The mainstream world needed Einstein to be clean, sterile, and mathematical. But this version of him, curious, metaphysical, questioning death, that was dangerous. Because if he believed something lay beyond, then doubt creeps in. Not just in physics, but in the very way we define life. This is the part of Einstein you weren't allowed to meet. Not the professor or the genius, but the seeker. And this forbidden moment was just the beginning. Imagine a cold, quiet night in Zurich, 1926. You're there, hidden away in a shadowed room, the air thick with candle smoke and the scent of cedar wood. Albert Einstein sits among a handful of people, but this isn't a lecture on relativity or quantum mechanics. No, this night is different. Something forbidden. Something erased from the textbooks. You see, what most people don't realize is that Einstein once crossed a line. a line between the seen and the unseen, between science and what some call the supernatural. What if I told you that on this very night he claimed to speak with the dead? This secret gathering was whispered about for decades until it was banned, locked away, and hidden from the public eye for 99 years. But now, thanks to recently uncovered letters and diaries, the veil is lifting. You're about to glimpse the event mainstream history tried to erase. The room was tense but quiet except for the crackling of fire and a sudden drop in temperature so sharp you could almost see your breath. Einstein's usually sharp eyes softened as a medium, whose identity remains hidden to this day, began the session. The air seemed to shimmer. And then a voice, not one you could easily recognize. It hovered in the space between time and space. A voice that Einstein described later as resonance beyond time. Imagine hearing a whisper that vibrates through your soul, like a secret chord only your deepest self can feel. What came next challenged everything Einstein thought he knew. Messages about life after death, about time folding in on itself, about consciousness not ending but transforming. You may wonder, how could the father of modern physics entertain such ideas? But this experience didn't just brush past him. It shook him to his core. You might ask yourself, what if what Einstein heard was real? What if the boundaries between life and death aren't as clear as we've been told? How would your understanding of reality shift if the greatest mind in history admitted to contact with the beyond? Eyewitness accounts, kept secret for decades, describe Einstein's expression that night as almost vulnerable, a softness that contradicts the cold genius image the world holds. One friend, Conrad Habicht, later wrote about the strange quiet that filled the room, how Einstein's mind seemed to race and pause simultaneously, caught between awe and disbelief. You're probably thinking, how reliable are these accounts? The truth is, much of this was buried. Official records were sealed, letters vanished from archives, and transcripts disappeared. The story was removed from textbooks, deemed too dangerous for public eyes, banned to protect the legacy of science as we know it. But here's the breadcrumb to chew on. These hidden papers show Einstein wrestling with questions no scientist dared publicly ask. What if death is not an end, but a transition? What if the fabric of reality includes layers unseen by ordinary people, but glimpsed by those who dare to look deeper? And another. Those messages contained references to cosmic laws, something Einstein called the universal harmony beyond equations. Could this be a clue linking his scientific discoveries with spiritual truths? You won't find this in your physics textbook. The session ended abruptly, but the impact didn't fade. Private journals reveal Einstein's conflicted thoughts, his fear of ridicule, and the suppression that followed. The truth was locked away, banned from public discourse, waiting nearly a century for the right moment to resurface. Now, as you hear this, you stand at the edge of that moment. What you choose to believe may forever alter your view of reality. Are you ready to lift the veil and see what's been hidden? Because once you glimpse this forbidden knowledge, you won't see the universe the same way again. But the moment Einstein stepped beyond the veil, claiming to speak with the dead, the world wasn't ready, and the guardians of knowledge moved swiftly to silence him forever. Here's how the scientific world reacted, and why this extraordinary moment was buried for nearly a century. You might imagine that when one of the greatest minds in history claimed to have spoken with the dead, the world would listen. But what actually happened was the opposite. A forceful silence fell. What most people don't realize is that Einstein's spiritual encounter was immediately dismissed. Scientific institutions, guardians of the rational, reacted with cold hostility. This wasn't just skepticism. It was outright rejection, like a shadow blotting out a fragile flame of forbidden knowledge. You see, you're not just hearing about history here, you're standing at the edge of a great divide. On one side, the mainstream narrative, the tidy, safe version of reality that fits neatly into textbooks and classrooms. On the other, a hidden truth, a fracture in that reality that threatens to unravel everything you thought you knew. It began in the halls of the Prussian Academy of Sciences, where Einstein was a revered figure. But whispers of his séance night leaked, first in hushed tones among close colleagues, then into wider circles. The response was swift and brutal. Official statements denied any such event took place. Letters describing the session were misplaced. Key documents were mysteriously removed from archives. Imagine a heavy curtain being drawn over the brightest light in the room. The energy of awakening snuffed out by those determined to keep it hidden. Why? What would frighten the guardians of science so much that they would bury the words of their own hero? Some say it was political pressure. Remember, this was the post-World War I era, a time of fragile governments and rising ideologies, a world desperate for control, afraid of anything that could disrupt the social order. A scientist talking openly about communicating with the dead threatened to ignite a spiritual revolution. A revolution too unpredictable for any ruling class to allow. Others suggest religious institutions, long wary of challenges to their authority, pushed to silence Einstein. After all, what happens when the man who changed our understanding of the universe starts speaking about the afterlife in terms that defy dogma? The veils of faith are thinner than you think, and this knowledge could tear them apart. You're probably wondering, how did this affect Einstein himself, the man who dared to pierce that veil? Officially, his reputation remained untarnished, but privately, journals show a man wrestling with isolation. The brilliant mind, now haunted by questions he could not publicly ask. What if the real story is that Einstein's legacy was carefully polished to hide a fracture? A truth so dangerous it had to be erased. You're standing on ground that few have dared to tread because the suppression wasn't only about protecting reputations. It was about controlling what reality you get to see, about making sure the doors to forbidden rooms remain locked tight. There's more to the story, buried deep in recently uncovered manuscripts, letters from Einstein to close friends hinting at a knowledge too dangerous to reveal. What was this knowledge? What did he fear could happen if the veil was fully lifted? You might feel a chill imagining the magnitude of this hidden knowledge, the awakening that those who see it experience. Imagine if this was the spark that could shatter the barriers between science and spirituality forever. But the question remains, who benefits from keeping you in the dark? You'll find clues in the quiet corners of history where removed and banned knowledge lingers like a ghost, hinting at truths erased from public discourse. This isn't just conspiracy, but the very fabric of control woven into our collective story. What if you're not meant to ask these questions? What if the mainstream narrative is a carefully constructed labyrinth, designed to trap your curiosity and snuff out your awakening? You, who seek to lift the veil, face a choice. Accept the safe version, or step into the light of forbidden knowledge. Remember, those who see the hidden truth understand that every official denial, every missing document, is a breadcrumb, a signpost pointing to something far more profound. You might ask yourself, why did it take 99 years for this to resurface? What cosmic timing is at play here? The silence around Einstein's seance wasn't accidental. It was enforced, it was weaponized, and it shaped not only his legacy but the very path of scientific inquiry. You will never see the history of science the same way again. There's a whispered story about a private meeting in 1927 where influential figures debated whether to publicly expose or bury Einstein's experience forever. What was said behind closed doors? What deals were struck in the shadows? You won't find this in mainstream biographies, but those who have accessed the recently unearthed diaries describe a growing fear among elite scientists, fear that this event would unravel decades of safe knowledge. Imagine the ripple effects. If Einstein, the icon of rationality, crossed into forbidden spiritual realms, what does that mean for your understanding of reality? The bans extended beyond paper and words. Early film reels, personal recordings, even radio interviews hinting at the event were scrubbed, destroyed, or labeled as myths. What you're learning now is exclusive knowledge. Once erased, now returning like a faint glow through cracks in the wall. You may feel the veil lifting. The awakening begins in the quiet moments, in the questions you dare to ask yourself. How often have you been fed a version of reality crafted to exclude spiritual truths? What does it mean for your own journey that even the brightest minds were silenced for stepping beyond accepted boundaries? You stand on the threshold of transformation. Once you know about this suppression, once you see the hidden hands at work, you can never unsee it. The path ahead is yours to choose, but the old narrative is crumbling. And somewhere in the shadows, waiting to be revealed, lies the final piece of this hidden puzzle, the profound insight Einstein barely dared to whisper. Now, step beyond the veil into the hidden philosophical and spiritual questions this forbidden event forces you to confront. What if everything you've been taught about life, death, and consciousness is just the surface of a much deeper reality? What most people don't realize is that the materialistic worldview, the idea that only what you can see, touch, and measure is real, is just one shadow cast over a much vaster, unseen light. Imagine standing in a dimly lit room, your eyes slowly adjusting to the darkness. At first, all you notice are the hard edges of familiar objects. But as your vision sharpens, faint outlines of things previously hidden start to emerge. The whispers of something beyond, something that science, in its rigid confines, refuses to acknowledge. This is the awakening that Einstein's secret encounter hints at. A veiled knowledge, banned and buried for nearly a century, but now flickering back to life, like embers glowing beneath ash. You might ask yourself, why does it feel so unsettling? Why does this truth seem to shatter the very foundation on which our understanding of existence rests? Because it does. For centuries, the dominant scientific narrative has been built on the bedrock of physicalism. Matter and energy, atoms and particles, nothing more. Consciousness was often dismissed as a mere byproduct of brain chemistry, an accidental flicker in the dark. Life's meaning reduced to chemical reactions and biological survival. Death, the final curtain. But what if Einstein's forbidden session, a conversation beyond the grave, suggests otherwise? What if consciousness extends beyond your physical shell? What if death is not the extinguishing of the flame, but a transition, a passage into a different dimension of awareness? You may have encountered whispers of this truth in spiritual teachings or fringe science. But here's the exclusive knowledge they don't want you to have. These realms are not just mystical fantasies. They are intertwined with the fabric of reality itself. And Einstein, yes, the very man who unlocked the secrets of time and space, stepped across that threshold, if only briefly. Think about that. The great rationalist, the skeptic, engaging with the unseen. Why? What did he glimpse that ordinary people remain blind to? What did he dare to touch that led to this sweeping ban, this 99-year silence enforced by powerful forces? This brings us to the core of the hidden struggle between mainstream science and forbidden knowledge. The event threatens to dissolve the barrier between the material and spiritual world, a boundary many rely on to maintain their sense of order and control. To question it is to risk everything: reputation, power, comfort. And yet, for those who see, who awaken, the implications are profound. Picture consciousness as a vast ocean, deep, mysterious, and largely unexplored. Modern science, with its microscopes and particle accelerators, has only just begun to map the surface waves. But the real depth lies beyond. The event you're learning about is a lighthouse beam cutting through the fog, illuminating dark waters where the essence of life, death, and spirit converge. What if your own consciousness is connected to this ocean? What if death is not a shore you crash upon, but a tide that carries you to new realms of existence? These questions demand more than belief or skepticism. They call for an awakening. You may wonder, how could such a revelation survive in a world obsessed with empirical proof? That's where the mystery deepens. You see, this knowledge has been deliberately hidden, banned from textbooks, erased from archives, wiped clean from official histories. Why? Because it threatens the narrative that keeps society grounded in fear of the unknown. Imagine if millions awakened to the reality that life and consciousness transcend the physical. The entire system, political, religious, social, would tremble. But here, in this hidden manuscript, in the hushed accounts and veiled testimonies, the veil lifts just enough to offer you a glimpse that stirs the soul and shakes the mind. Ask yourself, are you content living behind the curtain of conventional wisdom? Or are you ready to face the light, however blinding it might be? Because this knowledge will change you. You will never be the same once you peer into the abyss and find it staring back not with darkness, but with a radiant awakening. And the journey doesn't end here. In the days to come, as you dig deeper, you'll uncover hints of a convergence where science and spirituality begin to merge after centuries apart. The very institutions that once dismissed these truths are now quietly investigating, probing the edges of consciousness with new tools and new courage. But this shift is still fragile, hidden beneath layers of skepticism and denial. You will hear stories, fragments of experiments that defy the materialist model, of scientists who glimpsed something unexplainable during near-death experiences, quantum entanglement, or advanced meditation. These breadcrumbs lead toward a revolution of understanding. Yet, the mainstream will continue to suppress the full story, censoring voices, banning content, and erasing evidence. That is why what you are seeing now is exclusive, because it survives despite the tide of erasure, because you are among the few who dare to look beyond. So, what does this mean for you, in your life and your perception of existence? It means your understanding of reality is about to be expanded. The rigid walls of the material world will begin to crumble, revealing pathways of light you never imagined. What if the dead truly speak? What if consciousness is eternal? What if the universe is a vast, living consciousness itself, and you are a spark of that infinite fire? The answers are layered, like a fractal unfolding endlessly. And, as you embrace this awakening, you will find yourself standing at the edge of a new horizon, a horizon where science no longer denies spirit, but embraces it as a fundamental truth. What if you could never unsee this? What if you are destined to be one of the awakened, those who carry the hidden flame forward? Remember, this knowledge has been buried for nearly a century, but now it's yours to hold. Now, let's uncover the hidden clues scattered throughout Einstein's writings. Those subtle hints and secret signals that mainstream history has buried, but which could change everything you thought you knew. Einstein's writings, his letters, and even his private journals contain subtle hints. Not bold claims or loud announcements, but whispered clues, almost like secret signposts pointing toward unexplored spiritual territories. These are not the obvious equations or scientific papers you find in textbooks. No, these are the margins, the scribbles, the carefully veiled metaphors, the references to concepts that defy conventional explanation. Imagine flipping through a dusty old manuscript, the pages yellowed and fragile under your fingers. The ink faded but was still legible. There, tucked between scientific musings, you find phrases like the unity of all things, consciousness beyond time, or dimensions unseen by the naked eye. You feel a chill as you realize this is no ordinary scientific record. It's a map, left deliberately vague to keep the unprepared from stumbling too close. What if Einstein was trying to tell us something too dangerous for the mainstream to acknowledge? There are even cryptic references in his letters to contacts with secret societies, groups devoted to preserving esoteric knowledge passed down through centuries. These aren't the conspiracy theories you hear tossed around in online forums. No, these are coded mentions found in documents that have been suppressed, redacted, or simply erased from public archives. What if these societies were the keepers of a wisdom that merges science with the spiritual? Knowledge that could topple entire worldviews. Picture this. You're not just reading history. You're stepping into a labyrinth where every clue is layered with meaning. Ordinary people pass by, blind to what lies beneath, but those who see, those awakened to the hidden truth, can begin to trace the outlines of a reality far richer and stranger than what textbooks admit. Here's where the breadcrumb mysteries start to multiply. First, there's the enigmatic Document 47, found in a sealed vault after the event that was banned for 99 years. This document isn't just a record. It's a manifesto hinting at a cosmic connection between Einstein's spiritual experience and ancient philosophies, ideas that mainstream academia continues to dismiss as superstition. Imagine if this document contains the key to understanding consciousness as a force that transcends space and time. But why has it been kept locked away? Because the knowledge it holds threatens the very foundation of materialist science. Second, in his unpublished notes, Einstein alludes to the Great Veil, a metaphor for the divide between seen and unseen worlds. What if this veil is not just symbolic, but a real barrier, a filter that hides a vast spiritual dimension from ordinary perception. Imagine if peeling back this veil could unlock abilities like insights and awakenings that science currently can't explain. And third, there are whispers of a secret collaboration between Einstein and a circle of esoteric thinkers such as philosophers, mystics, and scientists who sought to bridge the gap between quantum mechanics and ancient spiritual wisdom. What if their research was too radical, too threatening to be released? What if you are now among the few who know of their existence? These breadcrumbs are more than tantalizing hints. They are fragments of a suppressed narrative, exclusive knowledge you won't find on mainstream platforms. In fact, much of this content has been removed or banned precisely because it challenges the accepted order. The truth, it seems, is a flame they try to smother. Ask yourself, why does this knowledge unsettle you? Why does it pull at the edges of your understanding? Because it shakes the very ground beneath your feet. It suggests that what you thought was impossible, communication beyond death, the unity of all existence, consciousness as an eternal force is not only possible but documented by one of the greatest minds in history. What if your own reality is built on layers like a palimpsest, with hidden writings underneath the obvious text? What if the material world is just a mask, hiding deeper truths that you are only beginning to glimpse? You might feel a stirring inside, a call to awaken. This is no accident. The breadcrumbs you've uncovered are invitations. Invitations to question everything, to peer into the shadows where science and spirit entwine, to become one of those rare individuals who carry the light forward. Remember, the most profound revelations are still ahead. What you see now is only the beginning, a spark flickering in the dark. Future episodes will unlock more pieces of the puzzle, revealing connections that will challenge everything you think you know. And that promise, that transformation, belongs to you. Because once you step into this hidden knowledge, you will never be the same. Imagine for a moment, what if everything you believed about Einstein, about life itself, was only the surface of a much deeper truth? What if this man, known for unraveling the secrets of the universe, had glimpsed beyond the veil that separates the living from the dead? How would that reshape your understanding, not just of him, but of your own existence? You see, embracing the unknown is not just an act of curiosity, it's a radical awakening. It shakes the foundation of everything you thought was real and invites you into a new realm of possibility. The fear of the unseen fades, replaced by a strange, almost electric clarity. What most people don't realize is that this transformation begins the moment you dare to question the limits imposed by mainstream knowledge. The veil lifts, and suddenly you're standing in the light of hidden realities. So here's the question no one is asking. If Einstein's forbidden knowledge has been locked away for nearly a century, what else lies in the shadows, waiting to rewrite everything you think you know? You will never look at the world the same way again. Are you ready to see?